The first thing my son ever said to me after his mother died was, "You can't bring mom back, and Talia's birthday only comes once a year." I swear I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't a sentence. It was a blow, a clear, ringing slap laid across everything his mother and I had built for him. The words hung in the kitchen like smoke that wouldn't clear. I stared at the phone in my hand, at the thin lipstick crescent still clinging to Nora's favorite mug, and realized something inside me had cracked with a clean, decisive sound. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I said, "The funeral is at 11:30, and listened to the music and laughter in the background before he said he understood and hung up. I stood there a long while in my suit, the same charcoal one I wore to my brother's burial a decade ago, and I counted my breaths the way Nora taught me the night Ethan was born. In 2-3, out 2-3. Her voice used to sweeten the harsh edges inside me. It still did, even now that the house had swallowed every sound the way the cemetery had swallowed every footprint we left. At the chapel, they asked where my son was. A neighbor whispered, "Ethan always adored Nora. He must be shattered." I folded my hands and told them he had other commitments, which was the kindest lie I've ever told. The pastor spoke of faith and family and threads that bind us beyond the grave. I watched the threads unspool in real time as soil hissed over the mahogany box, and the people who loved Nora dabbed at their eyes and drifted back to their cars. In the space where Ethan should have stood, close enough to hear my heart beating through my jacket, there was only wind. When I came home, I hung my keys on the little brass hook Nora insisted we install by the door, because systems make life gentler. The house was a museum of our ordinary. The shopping list still magnet to the fridge. The cardigan she always forgot on the arm of the sofa. A folded slip of paper stuck in her Bible like a secret pressed flower. I opened it and recognized her handwriting in an instant. "Henry, please don't let our boy forget us. We gave him everything. I hope that's been enough. Love, N." I sat down hard in the chair she claimed didn't match anything in the room. The oxblood leather one I refused to part with because it fit me like a glove. It creaked gently. I stared at our wedding photograph on the mantel. We're not young in the picture, just younger. Nora in her mother's too long lace hem, me with hair that still fought the wind. We looked like people who believed work could solve anything. For 28 years, that belief carried me, then pulled me along, then dragged me unresisting into decisions that had Ethan's name written in invisible ink across every check and promise. In the kitchen, the clock clicked. I could almost see Nora moving through the morning as she always had, watering the basil in the wide sink, humming the same 8 bars from some record she loved, piling mail by my place at the table. It took all my strength not to call her name. I did the next best thing. I pulled the brown accordion files out from the cabinet where we hid the private arithmetic of families, tuition receipts, bank transfers, mortgage papers, and set them on the table in neat rows. I labeled them the way she would have. Ethan, school. Ethan, house. Ethan, wedding. Ethan, emergency. The word emergency made me laugh, a small sound that hurt. We had financed a decade of emergencies that smelled like vacations and tasted like top-shelf bourbon. I ran the numbers with the precision that built Walsh and Sons Builders from a one-truck outfit to a company with a 15-crew calendar, then went back and ran them again. Private school K-12, $146,000. University, and then the graduate program he never finished, $251,000. The down payment on the charming green Craftsman on Maple Court, the one that made Talia cry when we handed them the keys, $360,000. The wedding at the Oak Ridge Conservatory with the chandelier that looked like it was made of frozen tears, $82,000. Cars, insurance, transitions, bridge loans, just until the bonus hits. It's an opportunity, Dad, not a cost. Another $120,000. Plane tickets. Rehabs for hobbies that lasted longer than jobs. It will all come back, Ethan had said 100 times. It had never once returned. The total looked like the kind of mistake that makes a man call the bank. $859,000 and change. Not including Saturdays bent double on job sites while my back learned to spell its own name in complaint. The phone lit up. Ethan's name glowed against black glass. I let it ring out. It lit again and again. On the third call I answered. He didn't say he was sorry he missed the funeral. He didn't ask what hymns we sang. Or who told the story of how Nora once saved a robin trapped in our garage using nothing but a broom and a prayer. He said, "Dad, hey, quick thing. We ended up going big for Talia's birthday. Live band, you know the one from that show. Steakhouse after. I got her a bracelet. It was a night. The cards are due today. We need 15 grand. Just wire it. You're a lifesaver." There is a stillness that arrives just before a wall collapses. The air holds its breath and the dust waits its turn, and in that half-second everything is perfectly, painfully clear. "No," I said. He heard the word as if it were in a language he did not speak. "No, no, Ethan. I'm not sending you money." He laughed. Then the laugh turned to something sharper. "Are you serious right now? Mom just died, and you're going to nickel and dime me?" "Your mother died," I said, "and you held a party." "She's gone, Dad," he shot back. "Life goes on. Talia has one birthday a year." "Your mother had one funeral," I said, and I could taste iron. He exhaled hard. "Fine. We'll figure it out. But don't expect to see us much if this is how you're going to be." "I understand," I said and hung up. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was decisive. The next morning I drove to the office in the gray hour before dawn, when even the river seems to hesitate. Walsh and Sons Builders occupies the corner of Laurel and Fifth, 2 stories of brick that sweat in summer and groan in winter. I let myself in, brewed coffee strong enough to start an engine, and turned on my desk lamp. On the wall, there's a framed photograph of our first real crew, 10 of us lean and proud in dirty jeans. Nora in the middle because we wouldn't have had a company without her keeping the books and the men fed. Beside that hung the gallery of managers. Ethan's picture smiled down at me, teeth whiter than truth. He had worked here 8 years. People stayed with us decades, but 8 years had felt like an eternity. I called Priya from HR to my office. Her face told me she already knew what I was about to say and had been waiting for the day. We went through the file. Tardiness documented. Client complaints answered with apologies and free upgrades. Expense reports that read like travel brochures. The kind of mistakes you expect from a new hire, but not from a project lead whose name was welded to the sign out front only because he happened to be mine. We drew up the termination papers. Security was called, routine for managers. I practiced the words I needed to say, out loud, to the empty room, because I wanted to be fair and steady. I wanted to be the boss I would have been to anyone else. At 9:30, he arrived. He never came before 9:30 unless I threatened to call his cell twice. He strolled through reception, laughing with the woman at the front desk and dropping a donut in her little foil-lined jar the way men like him do when they want to be liked more than they want to be good. Priya stepped into my doorway, and I pressed the intercom. "Ethan, in my office now." "Sure, Dad," he called breezy. "Let me grab a coffee." "Now," I said, and even over the little speaker the word had edges. He took one look at Priya and the folder on my desk and shook his head in a practiced smile. "We really staging a performance?" "Sit down." He sat. I slid the papers across the desk. "Your employment with Walsh and Sons is terminated effective immediately." He laughed again. He does that when he's cornered. The laugh is cover for 1,000 scrambling thoughts. "You don't mean that." "I do. Dad, Mr. Walsh," I said. "We're at work." That stopped him. He looked from me to Priya as if she might translate. He tried anger first. "You can't fire me. This is my company. It's mine. And you're fired." He tried Nora next. "Mom wouldn't." "Don't," I said. "Do not use your mother as a stick to beat me into submission." He tried tears then. He was always good at finding the places in me softened by love. "I can do better. I will. Just give me a chance." "You have had 1,000 chances." I clicked the pen and pointed to the line. His signature shook. Security waited by the door. It wasn't dramatic. It was sad. There are no confetti cannons when a man ends the longest mistake of his life. There is only paper and the taste of pennies. He carried a box to his car, old photographs and novelty stress balls rolling in the flaps, as if trying to escape. He looked up once at my window. I stood out of sight. I did not owe his anger an audience. Talia came in an hour later like a storm in heels. She didn't wait for an invitation. She didn't knock. "What have you done?" she demanded, as if I had dented her car. Priya stood when Talia crossed the threshold. "Mrs. Lane. It's Mrs. Lane Carson," she snapped, never looking away from me. "You ruined his career. You ruined our lives." "I ended a job he didn't do," I said. She rattled off threats about lawyers, about Nora's estate, about what the community will say. I pressed the security button, and both men appeared as if conjured. When they stepped to either side of her, Talia's voice pitched higher. Margaret would be ashamed. It took me a half-second to realize she'd gotten Nora's name wrong. She doubled down. She would. She'd be ashamed you're doing this to her son. Her name is Nora, I said, and she was ashamed of nothing except what you turned my son into. They escorted her out. The lobby shook with the last of her words like thunder finally breaking. I took down Ethan's photo from the manager's wall. The nail left a tiny pale mark, the ghost of its shape. I left it that way, unfinished, honest. Then I drove across town to the 12th floor of a glass building where the law firm of Mercado and Hale keeps the lights on later than any other office I know. Lila Mercado hugged me in the doorway before tucking her warmth away and becoming the smartest woman in the room. She handled our incorporation back when our best tool was pride, and she had rewritten Nora's will 2 years ago when chemo crept into our vocabulary like a stray dog we couldn't turn away. What do you want to do? She asked. I want to remove Ethan from everything, I said. Every beneficiary, every contingent, every maybe. I want the money Nora and I built to go where it does the work she believed in. Lila tapped her pen against a legal pad. Scholarships, then, and funding for the cancer wing, and a garden at St. Bridget's with daisies. Daisies. I smiled without meaning to. Nora said daisies look like they're listening, the way truly good people do. We drafted instruments until my hand cramped. We built the Nora Walsh Foundation and slotted assets into trusts Ethan couldn't crack with a crowbar and a prayer. It wasn't revenge. I felt that in my bones. Revenge would have been a public spectacle. This was private, deliberate rearrangement, a house plan redrawn to keep storm water from collapsing the foundation. When we finished, Lila brought in 2 paralegals to witness the signatures. Ink dried. Phone calls were made. Beneficiaries changed. Passwords updated. Permissions revoked. I left the building lighter than I'd entered, though the old grief still rode shotgun. I didn't have to tell anyone what Ethan had done. Davenport told itself. Someone from our parish said something to someone at the Rotary. Someone on the Rotary board said something to his wife. His wife told her tennis partners. By Friday, the owner of the downtown cafe had asked Talia to take her conversation outside because families here take funerals seriously. Ethan tried to book a tea time at the country club and found nothing available for months. The Chamber of Commerce postponed his lunch until after the holidays, and then never called. The Oak Ridge Conservatory refunded him nothing for a gala he'd promised to co-sponsor. He tried to charm his way back into rooms he'd never properly entered in the first place, and found those rooms occupied by people who nodded without smiling. I called the bank. The vice president, a man named Hal with a tie that always looked too tight, confirmed what he had tried not to call me about. The mortgage Ethan and Talia had on Maple Court was 2 months behind. They had always made the minimums by the skin of my guarantees. Are you planning to cover this month? Hal asked delicately. No, I said. He cleared his throat. Then we'll need to begin the process. Begin it. I went to the utilities office and had my name removed as the emergency contact. I called the credit card companies and removed myself as co-signer. The woman on the phone asked, with the cheerful cruelty of people who handle ruin before lunch, if I wanted to upgrade to a platinum card for my own use. I said no and hung up. When the power company shut off Ethan and Talia's lights, she called me weeping and furious, her voice jagged. We have no heat. It's freezing. You're doing this to punish us. Pay your bill, I said. We will, she insisted. We just need the bridge. Bridges I had built for them had washed out every time they rolled a truck across. I said nothing, and she told me I was heartless, and then I listened to her cry while I watched the steam lift from my coffee and vanish into the air. 3 more weeks, and the bank moved to foreclosure. It was November by then, when the trees out on Sorrel Road looked like they're holding their hands up in surrender. On the courthouse steps, a clerk with a ponytail read the legal description of Ethan's house into the crisp morning air. Talia clung to Ethan's arm as if she could hold him upright by willpower alone. She spotted me across the road and pointed like I had set the fire, and then had the nerve to warm my hands over it. I said nothing. I stood by a meter and watched Lila's junior associate raise her hand at the right moments. When the gavel fell, the house belonged to a blind LLC that belonged to a trust that belonged to a foundation that belonged, spiritually, to Nora's aching generosity. Talia screamed. Ethan sagged like a rope that had been carrying too much weight for too long. I didn't cross the street. There was nothing to say both of us hadn't already heard from our own better angels. The eviction notice went up 2 weeks later. They left in a rented truck. The big furniture already sold to people who didn't mind the smell of lavender candles, an expensive failure. She took the good bags. He took the framed engagement photo. The neighbors watched behind curtains. Nobody waved. When I collected the keys from the sheriff and stepped into the empty house, I stood in the kitchen and listened to the ghost sounds of parties I had paid for and never attended. Then I picked up a measuring tape and started the list. I brought in my old crew. We sanded floors, painted walls, replaced the broken hinge Talia had complained about for a year and never fixed. I had the landscaper remove the brittle rose bushes and planted daisies so thick they would hum in June. And in spring, I handed the keys to a nurse named Alma and her husband, who had 2 kids who chased each other in circles and laughed like people who believed houses were where love was born, not where love went to die. The darkest moment between Ethan and me came in winter, a month after the house was gone. He rang my doorbell on a Thursday night when the sky had the bruised look of snow. I saw his silhouette through the glass, the round of his shoulders, the way he rubbed his hands together to warm them. I opened the door and did not invite him in. He swayed like a man who had walked a long way. "Dad," he said, "can we talk?" "Talk," I said. He looked over my shoulder into the hallway like a kid who expects to be called to the principal and longs for his mother to appear instead. "I'm sorry," he said, and I believed he was sorry for the way the world treated him, not for the way he treated the world. "I need help." "With what?" "Everything. The apartments, you don't want to see it." Talia left. "I can't get work in town. People talk." "I screwed up. I know it now. Please." He tried to smile. "I can be what you wanted." That was the moment I decided to test the thing that mattered. "When is your mother's birthday?" He blinked. "June when?" "The 15th. It's July 9th. He flinched. I don't think he even knew he did it. "What was her favorite flower?" I asked. He shuffled. "Roses." She said roses try too hard. "Daisies, Ethan." She loved daisies. His face crumpled, and for a heartbeat I saw the boy he had been at 4 when he carried a jar with holes punched in the lid because he wanted to save the moth inside. "Dad, I'm trying." "You are trying to make your crisis my crisis," I said. "If you want a way back, get a job. Any job. Call me when you've kept it 6 months. Get a room you can pay for with money you earned. Learn the names of what you love." He stared at me a long time, weighed the cost of humility against the cost of pride, and chose what he always chose. "You'll die alone," he said, and because the boy inside the man still wanted to hurt me, he added, "without anyone to hold your hand." "I already did that," I said, and closed the door. Grief is not a straight road. It doubles back and takes shortcuts and leaves you wandering in neighborhoods you think you've never seen before until you realize you grew up there. But purpose can be a compass. By spring, the Nora Walsh Foundation had its first class of scholarship recipients. We asked the high school counselors to nominate students who always stood up when no one was watching. We gave 6 of them money that would have been wasted on Ethan. They came in wearing thrift suits and borrowed shoes, and they left with their heads higher. The foundation cut a check to the cancer wing for a therapy garden. We bought white chairs and a bench with an inscription, "Sit. Breathe. The living are allowed to rest." On the stone at the entrance, we carved daisies that look like they're listening. I watched a woman in a headscarf sit on that bench and close her eyes, and I knew beyond doubt that Nora approved. The community center we funded with the city opened in late summer, 3 blocks from the river where the old cannery used to leak steam into the morning. We named the art room for Nora because she always kept a drawer full of crayons for kids who came to the office with their parents, and because she taught me that pencils are not for ledgers alone. On the first day, a boy with a crooked bowl cut stood in the doorway and asked the coordinator if he could make a card for his grandmother. He did, tongue-shaped concentration peeking out as he drew daisies with 2 mini petals and a sun with sunglasses on. He stuck it on the bulletin board until someone could get him an envelope. The good we had planned in a lawyer's office had stepped into the light and put its hand in mine. I dated. That sentence deserves only 1 word, but in my life it held 1,000. Her name was Grace. She had been married to a math teacher for 31 years and then been widowed in a terrible quiet way that made her animated hands even more precious. We met at church when she dropped her program, and I bent for it at the same time. Later, she told me she liked the way I stood, steady, as if the floor were trustworthy. We did small things at first. Sunday pancakes at a place with a jukebox that refused to die. A matinee where a hero made the wrong choice and then spent 2 hours making the right one. A walk through the farmer's market where we bought peaches so ripe they asked to be eaten over the sink. Then we did bigger ones. A drive to the lake in November to watch the fog roll in and make the world a new idea. A long afternoon where we didn't talk at all and didn't need to. When I told her about Ethan, she listened without flinching. You taught him cause and effect, she said. You can't control which one he prefers. She made me laugh. She made me remember that laughter can live beside sorrow and they don't kill each other. I saw Ethan twice in those months without meaning to. Once at the gas station out on Route 9, where men in steel-toed boots buy cigarettes and Gatorade at 6 in the morning before the city is awake enough to judge them. He wore a blue polo with a name tag clipped crooked. He looked older than me for one hard second. He rang up my coffee. He didn't meet my eyes, then he did. "How are you, Mr. Walsh?" he asked, and I heard the mister the way a man hears a door halfway open. "I'm fine, Ethan," I said. "You?" "I'm working." "Good," I said, and meant it. The second time was at a diner on 7th where the bacon tastes like memory. He was bussing tables, moving fast in the way you do when speed is the only thing that keeps you from thinking about the weight on your shoulders. He saw me, stiffened, then came over without me having to be the bigger person. "Dad?" he said, but not with the right to the word, only with its hope. "I kept a job for months." "That's shorter than 6, I said. And he smiled a little because he had always admired a man who keeps his own rules. He leaned a fraction closer. "I know the Daisy thing now," he said, and for a moment we were two people on a path where the sign ahead could read either bridge or dead end. "Tell me," I said. "She said daisies look like they're listening," he said, "the way people do when they love you." I looked at his hands, raw from grease and bleach, and thought how I had never seen them dirty when he worked for me because he had never worked for me. Not in the way that word deserves. "Call me," I said. He nodded. I left cash under the sugar jar and did not wait for him to pick it up. Autumn came. The foundation gave 12 more scholarships. We put Nora's name on a little bronze plaque in the hospital garden, then on a bigger plaque at the community center that simply read, "Because of a woman who believed money could be love if you spent it right." I taught a Saturday workshop at the center all winter on fixing leaky sinks and patching drywall. The room filled with people who didn't own much, but wanted what they owned to last. On the last day, a girl named Alma Jr. Yes, my new homeowner's daughter, brought me a drawing she'd made of a house with a garden full of daisies. She had written, in a painstaking hand that made the letters look like they had knees, "Thank you for our home." I kept that paper on my fridge the way people keep diplomas. On the first anniversary of Nora's death, I took daisies to her stone and sat on the low wall and told her everything. "You were right about everything," I said. About kindness that doesn't ask for receipts, and about not letting the dead live rent-free in our anger, and about Ethan. Especially about Ethan. The cemetery was bright. Mourning doves made their soft, repetitive sound. I pressed my palm to the cool granite and waited for the part of the day when I knew I would cry. It came, a warm streak that surprised me the way a small summer storm does. "I hope you see the garden," I said. "I hope you hear the pencils scratching in the art room. I hope you smell sawdust and know I still have splinters that belong to you." Driving back through town, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was a message from Ethan. 6 months today. Gas station. No late days. Can we talk? I pulled into the diner instead and texted him to meet me there. I got a booth in the back where you can see the door and the kitchen and your own reflection in the chrome edge of the napkin dispenser. He came in wearing the same blue polo, hair trimmed, posture straighter than the last time. He slid into the seat across from me and reached for the menu as if ordering were an admission he intended to pay. "I'm on break," he said. 10 minutes. "We'll take 9, I said. He started without prompting. "I told Talia to leave," he said. "She was gone already, really, but I told her. I sleep better." He looked at his hands. "I pay rent. I keep receipts. I bought a coat at the thrift store and sewed the button on myself with a YouTube video. I don't drink as much." He laughed once, small and bitter. "I don't drink at all, actually, because the guy on night shift is a recovery guy, and he told me I should stop pretending I don't have a problem." He met my eyes. I had a problem. The waitress poured coffee. He thanked her. He never thanked people at tables when he was 10. He never thanked them at 30. Now he did. I donated $20 to the foundation last month, he said, flushing. It's not your money. I said, not a question. No, it was mine. I didn't put my name on it because I don't want a plaque. I just wanted to help with the pencils. He looked like a person who had figured out where to stand in a room that had seemed, for years, to move under his feet. I can't ask you to forgive me, he said. I spent that coin. But if there's a way back to being the kind of son who knows the answers to your questions, I want to try. There is a way, I said, my voice startling me with how gentle it could be even now. But it doesn't end in my wallet. It ends in your life. Bring me 6 months more. Bring me a record of rent paid. Bring me one name of someone you helped without telling anyone you did. He nodded. Okay. He hesitated. Do you want to know what I thought about at Mom's funeral? Because I didn't come, and I should have, and I think about it every night. I waited. I thought about how she used to put the mug in the freezer before she poured me root beer, because she said a boy should get some things cold and perfect when the world is hot and messy. He swallowed. I thought about the mug when I was pouring Talia a drink on her birthday, and that's the worst thing I've ever admitted out loud. You can come with me this afternoon, I said after a long moment. To the hospital garden. His eyes filled so fast I thought he might be sick. I can. As a man, I said. Not as a beggar. We'll sit on the bench with her name, and you'll tell her what you told me. Then we'll go to the center, and you'll carry boxes for an hour, and then you'll go back to work. We did exactly that. We sat on the bench. He didn't touch the plaque like it might burn him. He just looked at the daisies and said, I made a mess. And I said, clean it. And he nodded like he was on a roof with me, and I'd told him the pitch was dangerous, so he should keep his center of gravity low. At the center, he stacked paper reams, wiped tables, and scribbled his name on a volunteer sheet. He said goodbye to Alma's kids politely. He clocked in at the gas station with 2 minutes to spare. It was an absolution. It was a beginning. Months, then another year. The foundation grew. We got letters written in pencil by kids who said their mothers cried when they opened the acceptance envelope. We got a plaque from the hospital that was too shiny for my taste. We got a photograph from a kid at the center who drew a picture of a man in a hard hat holding a daisy, and for reasons that surprised me, it looked exactly like me and not at all like me. The daisy was as big as the helmet. I saw Ethan every other week, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not. He didn't ask for money. When his car died, he bought a used one with cash he'd saved in a jar labeled with painter's tape, CR, in block letters. He brought the jar to my house to show me the line where he had written the date of every deposit. He drank coffee that wasn't mine and told me about the regulars at the station, the trucker who buys jerky like it's medicine, the nurse who works nights and always has mascara smudged on her cheekbone, the owner, who gave him a holiday bonus of a $50 bill folded into a star. He said it's for luck, Ethan said, half embarrassed. I said luck is for people without plan B. I told him, and he rolled his eyes because I'd said that to him 1,000 times, and it only now landed. One evening in late spring, we walked side by side to Nora's stone with fresh daisies. He carried the flowers. He had never carried flowers for anyone without me asking before. We stood in front of the granite, and he asked if he could read something. He took out a crumpled note and read words that a man who works the night shift helped him write, because words get slippery when you're trying to use them to tell the truth. He said he loved her. He said he was sorry. He said he used to think love was a bank that never closes, and now he knows it's a hand that holds you upright while you learn to walk again. He said he knows her birthday, July 9th, and that daisies are the ones that listen. He put the note between 2 stones. He didn't cry until we were halfway back to the car. We watched a thunderstorm from my porch that night, the kind where lightning looks like a branch across the sky. You know what justice is? He asked, surprising me. It's when the thing that hurts becomes the thing that teaches. I don't know where he heard that, or if he invented it on the spot, but I wrote it down on a slip of paper and pinned it under a magnet shaped like a daisy because I wanted to see it when I reached for milk. The foundation funded a summer program in Nora's name that teaches kids how to build a bookshelf and then asks them to fill it. I taught the hammering part. Ethan taught the part where you use a level and a kind of patience I once didn't think lived in him. He showed a boy how to cite a straight line, and the boy said he'd never seen anyone do that. And Ethan grinned in a way I hadn't seen since he was 12 and figured out a bicycle chain after I'd made it worse. At the end of the day, he wiped down the table and said, "You were right about asking for proof that isn't a speech." The last time I saw Talia was at the grocery store over by the highway. She had the hard look of someone who had spent a year sharpening herself against other people's mistakes and her own. She saw me and straightened her shoulders. "You did this," she said, not as an accusation anymore, but as if we were two auditors going over a file. "No," I said. "He did. He's sober," she said. "Good. He works too much." "Good. He doesn't have time to date." "That's not my business," I said. She looked at the cart, at my daisies and eggs. "You always buy daisies," she said. "He told me that." "You never asked what they were," I said. "We parted like two people leaving a courthouse after a settlement everyone can live with, but no one celebrates." "You want to know whether Ethan and I ever got back to the place where a son calls his father to tell him a dumb joke he heard at the gas pump? Not fully, but we stepped onto a road that didn't make me flinch. We ate pancakes together sometimes. He came to Christmas service and left afterward without telling a single person he'd been there. He clapped when the foundation announced a new cohort and handed out envelopes the way a man atones, quietly. He kept his receipts. He kept his job. He kept his word. The 3 Ks that break the back of an old man's anger. On the second anniversary of Nora's death, I stood by her stone again with daisies. The grass had grown back soft around the base, as if the ground had loved her too. I told her about the girl who wrote to us from nursing school to say she passed her boards and now spends nights inserting IVs into arms that need a gentle touch. I told her about the boy who stood in our art room one afternoon and drew his house with a blue roof, and then while I looked away drew a door, and then another door, and when I looked back said, "Turns out we live in a duplex now, but it's okay because I get 2 Christmases." I told her about Alma's garden, where the daisies grow riotous and the tomatoes come in fat as fists because love, when it finally finds soil, doesn't know how to stop. I told her about Grace, who sat beside me on the porch and put her hand over mine in the simple sacrament of the living. "We're okay," I said to the stone. "He's learning. I'm learning. Your name is everywhere." A wind carried the smell of cut grass and the faint, clean scent of hospital antiseptic from down the hill, an odd combination that somehow made perfect sense in a life like ours. On my way home, I stopped at the diner. Ethan was at a corner table with a ledger open, a pencil behind his ear. He looked up and smiled the small, true smile of a man who knows a father's order by heart. "Black coffee," he called to the waitress. "And pancakes." "He'll say no. Bring them anyway." We ate. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. He told me he'd been approved for a night manager position at the station. He said he was scared. I told him fear is a good sign. It means you're standing somewhere worth your attention. We walked out together into afternoon light. He said, "You know what I bought with my first bonus?" I made a face. "Don't say something stupid like a watch." "A mug," he said, and then he laughed at my raised eyebrow. "A frosted one." I put it in the freezer and poured root beer and sat on the edge of my bed and thought about how the world can be hot and messy and a boy should still get some things cold and perfect sometimes. He looked at me. "I'm trying to be the boy who remembers." "You're being a man," I said. We stood in the parking lot a minute, looking at nothing in particular. He reached for his keys, then stopped. "Dad." "Yes." "Happy, you know." He gestured vaguely toward the cemetery and the sky. "Happy remembering." "You too," I said, and it sounded right in my mouth. At home, I watered the basil on the windowsill, straightened a stack of mail, and pinned a wedding invitation from a scholarship recipient to the cork board by the phone. I boiled water for tea the way Nora liked, 100% rolling, 0% impatient. I sat in my oxblood chair in a room full of light and thought about what justice had required of me. Not fury, not spectacle, just the courage to close doors that had been left open too long, and the discipline to hold a line steady long enough for someone I loved to find it in the dark. Later, when I went out to the garden, the daisies turned their faces toward me as if they had something important to hear. I told them the same thing I tell myself every night before I sleep. "We did right by her," I said. "We did right by me. And maybe, just maybe, we're starting to do right by him." If you enjoyed this story, tap that like button, subscribe for more, and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. There's another story waiting for you on the left. Go ahead, press it, and I'll meet you there.